Have you ever seen a baby sloth, otherwise known as a cub? Let's spend a whole video talking about sloths, and they are, after all, one of Sir David Attenborough's favourite animals. Exhibitions like the Wildlife Photographer of the Year award allows us to see parts of the world that we almost never encounter. I spoke to photographer Dvir, who's captured these images at La Selva Biological Research Station in Costa Rica. He is shortlisted for the People's Choice Award, which means that you can vote his images for your favourite. The featured photo shows a mother three-fingered sloth wrapped around her baby, shielding it from the rain. And this baby relies completely on its mum for warmth, for protection, and learning how to navigate the canopy. When a baby is born, the mother often gives birth hanging upside down. The baby instinctively clings to its mum's chest, using its tiny claws to hold it there, and spends most of the first 6 months there. Over time, it starts to reach for leaves and explore all around its mother while staying connected to her for safety. Dvir spent almost a week observing this pair, and he noticed that the mother had a cataract in one eye, which made movement across sharp leaves and branches even more challenging. On a couple of occasions, she actually got stuck, pausing to rest for a few minutes before backtracking or finding new routes to continue. There were moments that left Dvir feeling quite worried at how she would navigate the canopy and get out of the situation she was in. But given the fact that she managed to do this and she had a cataract, it was probably not her first baby. This image that Dvir captured, that you can vote for in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year People's Choice Award, was captured on a rainy afternoon. The rain was light, but it was persistent, and the mother sloth remained high up in the canopy. Now, he used his longest lens with teleconverters and a tripod, and he had to maneuver carefully to capture this beautiful moment. Now, the baby sat on the mum's chest sleeping and occasionally waking itself up to scratch before curling back into the mother. Other photos show them feeding together. And you can see that the mother is pulling down leaves and the baby follows her lead, learning which branches and leaves are safe to eat and how to eat them. Most of the day is spent resting, punctuated by brief moments of activity. Now, as this cub grows, it will develop a thick outer fur and actually turn into a greenish hue. And that is characteristic of wild sloths. The green comes from algae, fungi, and tiny invertebrates that live in the fur. It's basically a miniature ecosystem that provides camouflage and contributes to the sloth's survival. As you might have gathered, sloths live in the trees and they're herbivores. They live only in the tropical canopies of Central and South America. Three-fingered sloths, like the ones in Dvir's pictures, have evolved a suite of extraordinary adaptations for arboreal living, that's living in the trees. They have long hook-like claws and specialized muscles that allow them to hang from branches almost effortlessly, conserving energy whilst they eat, they sleep, and they even give birth. They can't actually shiver, so their thick fur helps to regulate their body temperature. They slow their metabolism down to half of what would be expected for a mammal of their size, and that allows them to survive on a diet of very low nutrient leaves. Sloths, like cows, have a 4-chambered stomach, and that ferments leaves over long periods, allowing them to extract as much energy from them as they can. But they spend a lot of time upside down, and they have a solution, because if I ate upside down, I would probably throw up. They have an esophagus that loops in a way that allows them to eat upside down, but the trade-off is that they can't actually vomit. So if they eat something poisonous, they can't vomit that up. So that's why it's even more important that the cubs learn so diligently what leaves are safe and what is not from their mum. Despite their reputation, sloths don't actually sleep as long as people think. Wild sloths sleep 8 to 10 hours a day, taking short naps throughout the day and throughout the night. And this is a pattern called cathamerality. And their slow and deliberate movements are all energy efficient. It allows them to move around their huge home ranges with minimal effort. Now, the algae that I mentioned earlier that allows them to camouflage within the leaves is also home to another animal, and that is moths. There are moths that literally live in the fur of the sloth, and they actually use the sloth to complete their life cycle. The moths lay their eggs in the sloth's poo. Everyone wins: the algae, the moths, the sloths. Now, here's a fun fact. Sloths only really come down from the trees once a week to poo. They perform a distinctive poop dance. They dig a hole and they cover up their poo. The reasons behind this covering up are still being studied, but the research so far suggests that it might help them avoid predators and fertilize the soil, which is helpful for the life cycle of the moths that live in the sloth's fur. I'm getting tongue twisted saying sloths and moths, but you get the picture. Their teeth are another really unique adaptation. The three-fingered sloths have small peg-like teeth and they grow continuously. Two-fingered sloths have additional sharp caniform teeth, and they self-sharpen as they open and close their mouths. Now, their claws are also very unique. They are long, they are curved, and they're constantly worn down by climbing. If they're broken, they can regrow, though they will regrow often imperfectly. Sloths are also surprisingly strong. I wouldn't want to challenge one to an arm wrestle because despite the fact that they have less overall muscle than humans, their grip strength is 3 times that of humans. And a lot of their strength is concentrated in their upper arms because they're pulling themselves, hauling themselves into the branches through the canopy. Now, while sloths are characteristically slow on land, they are really good swimmers. 3-fingered sloths can move through the water 3 times faster than they can move on land. And their large gas-filled stomachs actually acts as a flotation device, and they can use their really long arms to steer them through the rivers that fragment the forest. Now, today's tree-dwelling sloths are small and slow, but their ancestors were quite different. For tens of millions of years, sloths ranged from tree-dwelling sloths to giant ground-dwelling creatures. I can't say. For millions of years, sloths ranged from tree-dwelling animals to giant. I've said this sentence so many times, I'm just going to go with it. I cannot say tree dwelling and ground dwelling. That is what I should be saying. Basically, there were small ones that lived in the trees and really big ones that lived on land as well. These were species like Megatherium and Eremotherium. They weighed several tons and they had claws over 1 foot long. And they even spent some of their time in shallow seas feeding on seagrass. You can actually see a full Megatherium skeleton cast on display in the Natural History Museum in London, which shows just how tall they would have stood. Now, the sloths that hang in today's rainforest are only a small surviving branch of a once far more diverse family. As I said, there's lots of different sizes, but there were actually 50 species that once lived through the Americas, and a lot of them were these really big animals that lived in the ground, on the ground. I'm not going to say ground dwelling, I just can't say it fast. The small tree living, I can't even say tree anymore, I've said it too many times. The small tree living sloth that we see today evolved much later, shrinking in size to adapt to life in the canopy after millions of years that their ancestors had grown really quite large. The extinction of most giant sloths happened about 10,000 years ago, and surprise, surprise, it coincides with the arrival of humans, although climate shifts probably also would have played a role. Only the small ones that lived in the trees survived, retreating into the rainforest refuges. Now, despite millions of years of evolution and adaptation, modern sloths face a rapidly changing world, habitat loss, climate change, and human encroachment. The expanding roads, agriculture, and fencing actually cuts up the forest that they depend on. In another Wildlife Photographer of the Year image by Emmanuel Tardy, a sloth clings to a barbed wire fence in Costa Rica, and this is a really powerful reminder that the boundaries of our lives create cuts directly through the forest that they inhabit. Photographers like Dvir and Emmanuel give us rare access to life unfolding high up in the canopy. Through their images, we can see not just an animal that moves really slowly, but the beauty of wildlife photography is that it gives us insight into their behaviour, the relationship between the mum and the baby, how they navigate the trees, what the mum does despite the fact that she's got a cataract, a cub learning leaf by leaf what to eat, and the entire miniature ecosystem that lives in their fur. If you think that this photo is a stunning image that deserves to win the People's Choice Award, you can vote for Dvir's image in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year People's Choice Award until the 18th of March. I will leave the link in the description below. And perhaps next time someone calls you sloth-like, you can take it as a compliment. There's nothing wrong with a bunch of naps, extraordinary upper body strength, but just maybe don't mention the poop dance.